When a taxpayer-funded nonprofit begins training its staff on how to present information without actually presenting information, it isn't just a media strategy. It is a systemic liquidation of public transparency that leaves the entire city's ledger in a state of ethical insolvency.
The Maryland Public Information Act allows the general public to access records of how institutions manage and spend taxpayer dollars. Over the past year, this allowed our team to expose how the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on out-of-state trips for its adult staff and partners. Now, a former employee at the nonprofit told us that they were instructed on how exactly to avoid our public information requests, leaving you, the taxpayer, in the dark about how your money is spent. The whistleblower asked to remain anonymous out of fear of retribution.
We are witnessing an operational breakdown in Baltimore where internal controls have been replaced by redaction protocols, and where meeting agendas are intentionally stripped of descriptive language to ensure that no outside auditor can ever trace the audit trail of how hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent.
How do you expect taxpayers in Baltimore City to be okay with how your office is spending their money? And do you believe that you owe them an apology for how their dollars are being spent?
And thank you for your question, Mackenzie. I think we have to be very clear about this, right? We're not talking about money that was spent inappropriately. As I said to your station last week, we're talking about people who skip protocol points, right?
The mayor says some of the flower spending was for city employee funerals.
I know that the taxpayers have no problems with us spending that. And the things that are being highlighted, like, for example, you guys are focusing in on, like, the skyboxes, right? The reality is that the city of Baltimore has been spending money on skyboxes at Camden Yard since I was 8 years old, and at M&T Bank Stadium since I was 13 years old. We're not talking about misuse of funds, and you're talking about a fraction of the mayor's office budget, even though folks are trying to make it look like this was something done illegal. This is not that. We're going to continue to operate the same way that we have in the city of Baltimore, and that's with the utmost integrity, even when people try to make it like we're looking like we're doing the opposite. Thank you.
We followed up with the mayor for more clarity.
Do you believe, even if it's been going on, is that an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars? And then also, though, I know that your office spent nearly $4,000 on a goodbye party for somebody who never left and is still making almost $200,000. Why is that okay?
Yeah, I think, Mackenzie, we know that you guys want to make this out to be something that is not. Again, it's not just the city of Baltimore. The state of Maryland has skyboxes and have had them forever. And again, you're harping on this small amount of money, which you heard again. Nothing illegal was done here.
But is it appropriate?
If it's not illegal, then it's appropriate, Mackenzie.
Do you think that's okay for tax dollars to be spent on it?
I think it's okay for us someone who has spent money to have young people who have never been in that stadium before, who have never gotten invited before, who would have never had the opportunity to be there to do that. For people, for first responders, for people who clean up trash, absolutely. So no matter what you guys are going to try to twist this into, absolutely, we're going to continue to make sure that actual residents can enjoy that ability to be in that spot and those skyboxes. That's all I have to say.
What
and just run what I said earlier. My response is what I gave you earlier.
Is Marvin's party okay?
This is a hostile takeover of the truth, where the very institutions designed to serve the youth are reportedly cooking the books to hide out-of-state travel and fraudulent invoices from the voter shareholders who fund them. We are documenting a scenario where the chief executive of the city is currently in a litigation deadlock with his own inspector general, fighting to keep the financial receipts of a defunct pilot program in a dark pool of information that state law supposedly protects. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's House. As a certified public accountant focused on forensic verification, I don't look at the press releases. I perform a deep dive audit into the material inconsistencies that signal a systemic governance default. In a standard financial audit, if a subsidiary, a city-funded nonprofit, is found taking conversations offline specifically to avoid public records requests, you immediately issue an adverse opinion and flag the organization for management fraud. Today, we are performing a transparency and solvency audit on Baltimore. We are analyzing the material breach at the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund, the fraudulent invoices discovered in the defunct SIDEAT program, and the fiduciary obstruction of Mayor Brandon Scott, who claims he is following the law while the city's watchdog is suing him for non-compliance. This is the moment where the public trust ledger of Baltimore has officially hit technical insolvency. The operational breach at the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund is a masterclass in procedural deception. According to a whistleblower who has come forward to disclose the deficit, the staff at this nonprofit received specific media training designed to layer the information they provided to the public. From an investigative standpoint, this is a systemic erasure of the audit trail. The whistleblower alleges that meetings were placed on calendars with no titles, so that if a Maryland Public Information Act (PIA) request were ever filed, an outside observer would have zero traceability regarding the operating intent of those gatherings. In the world of forensic verification, if you are intentionally removing the primary identifiers from your meeting ledger, you are premeditating a fraud. You are ensuring that taxpayer dollars spent on out-of-state trips for staff and partners remain off-book liabilities that the public can never audit. This media training included instructions to take conversations offline if an email thread became too hot or too sticky. As a CPA, I track the communication lifecycle of a transaction. When management instructs employees to avoid putting too much in writing, they are intentionally creating a void in the internal controls. This allows for undisclosed liabilities and unverified expenditures to proliferate without any documentary evidence to hold the board of directors accountable. The Maryland Public Information Act is the external audit tool of the citizen, and by layering their response to avoid it, this nonprofit has defaulted on its transparency contract with the people of Baltimore. While the nonprofit is cooking the meeting agendas, the Inspector General, IG, is auditing a data breach that represents a total security default for the city. The IG's latest 50-page report uncovered nearly $700,000 spent on the SIDEP pilot program. From a forensic integrity perspective, the IG found material variances where actual receipts were thousands of dollars less than the invoices submitted for payment. In many cases, the IG has certified these invoices as fraudulent. But the loss of capital isn't the only liability here. There was a massive breach of personal identifiable information, PII. Over 700 identities, including names, dates of birth, and criminal charges, many belonging to juveniles, were sent from a city worker's account to a relative's private Gmail. This is a critical security breach that has been referred to law enforcement for a criminal audit. The management response from Mayor Brandon Scott has been a study in defensive posturing. When pressed by reporters on why a pilot program was launched without performance metrics, the mayor's reporting was non-responsive. He claimed the program ended in 2024 and that he disagreed with the findings, but he refused to verify the data during the press conference. From a risk management perspective, launching a $700,000 asset without success metrics is an imprudent use of capital. It is a sunk cost that provided zero ROI to the community. The mayor's dispute with the IG over subpoena compliance is the primary conflict in the city's operating environment. The IG has blacked out portions of her reports because the mayor's office has redacted the names of those who received the money. This is a forensic deadlock where the auditee, the mayor, is blacking out the ledger of the auditor, the IG. Mayor Scott's defense on the radio was that he is following state law and that the IG cannot be legally independent of the city. He argues that as the CEO and chief executive officer, he must ensure that all information transfers adhere to the state charter. But as any forensic investigator will tell you, when the CEO uses legal technicalities to block a subpoena from the internal auditor, it is usually because the information is bad. Taxpayer advocates have disclosed that this obstruction is likely a hedge against the millions of taxpayer dollars that have been wasted on fraudulent CBOS, community-based organizations. The mayor's claim that the IG should be politically independent but legally dependent is a systemic contradiction. You cannot perform a neutral audit of the executive branch if the executive branch has the veto power over your access to the records. This governance crisis has led Councilman Mark Conway to propose a ballot measure that would make the Inspector General a co-custodian of city records. From a forensic infrastructure perspective, this is a mandatory security upgrade. It would de-risk the audit process by ensuring that the IG doesn't have to beg the mayor for the receipts of the city's spending. The mayor's audit opinion is that this bill doesn't meet legal sufficiency and supersedes the state charter. He is amortizing the conflict by promising to follow state law till the cows come home, while the watchdog is literally in court suing him for the unanswered subpoenas. This litigation surcharge is being paid for by the Baltimore taxpayer, who is currently funding both sides of a legal war over their own money. We must also audit the social cost of this transparency deficit. As the video notes, there is a hierarchy of legal consequences in this country. The system is built so that small-tier actors with less money and power face immediate liquidation, criminal consequences, while high-tier political assets can amortize their scandals through legal delays and redacted documents. The whistleblower at the nonprofit is hiding her face for fear of retribution, which is a negative indicator of the internal culture of Baltimore's government. When employees fear retaliatory discharge for disclosing waste, fraud, and abuse, the ethical equity of the entire city is in default. The CITE program's failure to track effectiveness is a systemic reporting error. To spend $700,000 on neighborhood safety and engagement without performance metrics is like investing in a startup without financial statements. It allows community-based organizations to submit fraudulent invoices without any verification control. The fact that the IG findings have been referred to law enforcement for criminal investigation suggests that the materiality of the fraud is significant. But as long as the chief executive can block the details by claiming state law protections, the public stakeholders will never know who got the money and whether that was legit. My forensic verdict on the 2026 Baltimore fraud scandal is that the city is currently operationally insolvent in terms of accountability. The whistleblower testimony regarding hidden meeting titles is a sovereign disclosure of intentional deception. The CITE data breach of juvenile records is a total security failure that impairs the trust of the city's most vulnerable stakeholders. And Mayor Brandon Scott's subpoena resistance is a material breach of fiduciary duty that redacts the truth from the people who pay the bills. The Baltimore Children and Youth Fund out-of-state trips are just the tip of the iceberg. When management teaches its staff to present information without actually presenting information, they have systemically liquidated the rule of law. Until the Inspector General is recapitalized with the legal authority of a co-custodian, the Baltimore Ledger will remain a dark pool of wasted capital and unverified transactions. The system is protecting the big fish, while the taxpayer is left to absorb the loss. I want to hear from you. Is the mayor's subpoena resistance a legitimate protection of state law, or is it a hostile obstruction of the public audit? Should the Inspector General be a co-custodian of records to prevent executive redaction? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the proceeds of your taxes and the safety of your kids are sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's House. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.